Aloha friends, it's Robert Stellick with Blue Planet Surf. Welcome to our shop here in Haleiwa. Today's video is about our latest iteration of the foil waist leash, retracting foil waist leash. This is our latest iteration. We believe in continuous improvement here at Blue Planet, so we always try to improve the products. We've been making these leashes for the last 3 years or so for stand-up foiling and wing foiling. They're perfect for that. Keeps the leash out of your way, no drag in the water, gets the board away from you in the waves, and it has a lot of advantages. So I'm going to go over the features, what's new on this new model, and how you use it. So one of the first things you'll notice on our new leashes is the shock cord. So this one has a thinner Spectra line shock cord, and some people are worried that this doesn't look very strong, but this is actually much stronger. Before we were using this kind of leash line, which is thicker, but this actually, we had issues with it getting abraded from being hooked on the quick release. So over time, this rubbing and stuff abraded the outer shell of the leash lines. So after a while, after it gets abraded, then it can rip. So this line is actually much stronger. It's 600-pound test strength. And then it has like this sheathing around it that's very abrasion resistant. But if you do ever notice the sheathing getting worn through, you should replace it. But we've tested these for over many sessions, and they've held up really well. So this is a big improvement. It looks thinner. It doesn't look as strong as this line, but I assure you this is a much better choice for materials, a much better quality line. And then it has like a little tab on here, so that makes it easier to remove once you put it on. So the way to attach it to your board, if you already have a leash line, you just put that little tab through there and run the shock cord through it. So now you got it looped on there. And then if you get worked in the waves and the thing is really tight, this little tab makes it easy to undo that. Like you can pull on it and that'll loosen up the knot. So you want to keep this little pull tab in there so it's easier to loosen up the knot if it gets really tight from being in the waves. So this is how you want to attach it to the board. And then the shock cord attaches to the leash. When the reel gets to the end of the reel and it stops, this shock cord gives you some like shock absorption, so you won't get a sudden yank from the board. If it gets pulled, if your board gets dragged by a wave, you don't want to get to that end of the reel and all of a sudden have it jerky. So having this elastic is really nice. Makes it a real gentle pull at the end. And this leash can attach to that quick release either directly like this, which works fine for most people, but sometimes people have reported that the leash gets pulled out. So if you want to make sure that you can't lose your leash, this is a nice simple method to do it. You loop this around the handle, this handle. So you bring this over the handle, and then you bring the leash through the quick release. So it's still a fast way to put it on, but this way you can make sure that it basically holds the handle down so it can't open by itself. It takes, you basically have to pull on it to open it and then unhook it like this. So that's how I recommend using it. Hook it over this little handle and then run it through the loop. This is the most secure way to attach it. Basically the string holds down the little lever. Okay, so let's talk about the wing leash itself, how to attach it to your body. And I usually have a wing leash like this with a wrist cuff. It's attached to my wing. So what I do is I slide this over the waist belt. So now my wing leash is also attached to the belt. And then this is a new buckle that we're using now. It's a 600-pound test strength as well. Has a buckle that, and you can tighten it. So this buckle has a little Velcro tab right here. So if you have excess, you can attach this Velcro over the excess part of the strap. And then what I do is I bring the wrist leash to the front. So the wing is attached to the front, and then the retracting wheel is kind of behind me or next to me in the back. And then I attach the board to this part, loop it over the handle and through. Now I have the board attached to me in the back and then the wing attached in the front. So if I lay down on the board, I can paddle with my hands free. I don't have a wing dragging on my wrist. So the original waist belt had a Velcro closure, so you had to loop it through the closure and then wrap it on. The new belts have a simpler closure. You just snap it in. It's kind of a quick release, easy to take off. And then, so this allows it also to be made smaller, so you can bring it down to any waist size, like as small as you want. And then you can also take it off and put a harness hook over it, so you can still use the harness hook with it if you want to use it as a wing harness. This kind of gives a little bit of padding on your back, which makes it actually pretty comfortable to use as a harness as well. It has like this neoprene padding on the back. And then of course the leash is attached directly onto the belt. It's basically screwed through the belt, which keeps it from jiggling around and getting in your way and so on. All the parts are stainless steel. Still, we recommend after using it, just shoot a little bit of fresh water into it. If you're using it in the ocean, just rinse out the salt water so it doesn't get all crusty with salt inside. So basically that's it. The leash itself, it comes out about 10 feet. So it's quite a bit of leash that comes out, you know, so this is another advantage of this leash. If you're in the waves, what happens is it gets pulled all the way to the end. You know, your board is pretty far away from you, this plus the length of the shock cord, plus it gets stretched out. So you got about 15 feet or so that the board gets away from you in the waves, which absorbs a lot of the shock in the first place, that the wave doesn't yank on you as much. And then also it's much safer because it doesn't recoil quickly and come right back at you, shoot at you with the foil towards you or something like that. And if you have a wing, if you're winging, it basically keeps the board away from your wing. Your wing will stay closer to you because the wrist leash or the wing leash is shorter, and keep the board out of the way of the wing. And then that's important, especially if the board's getting tumbled in the waves. You don't want that foil to get anywhere close to your wing, because if the foil touches your wing, most likely it's going to put a hole in it. So after you fall, and while you're gathering up your wing and so on, the spring tension will slowly pull back your board. And then by the time you're ready to start again, the board will be close to you, right next to you, and by the time you have the wing ready to go, you'll have the board right next to you and just get on the board and go. So having that spring is also nice because it kind of slowly pulls the board back to you. It gets it far away from you, but then also it kind of reels it back in. So this reel leash is a great solution if you're wing foiling. It's also great for e-foiling, and then also stand-up foiling and wing foiling. So those are the sports I recommend it for. For prone surf foiling, it's not ideal because then sometimes the waist leash is kind of in your way. But if you're standing on your board, like stand-up foiling or wing foiling or downwind foiling, for all those uses, it's ideal. And another thing is when you're standing on the board, the leash is attached to your waist, so it completely keeps the leash off the water. You never have the leash touching the water. So especially in situations like where you're racing or you just want maximum efficiency, having the leash off the water obviously gives you less drag than having a leash bouncing around behind you. And especially in foiling, because it's so efficient, any little drag from the leash will be noticeable. You know, any tiny bit of drag, it makes a difference. Another word about coil leashes: if you've ever used a coil leash, like I used to use a coil leash, and out of frustration I ended up developing this leash. But obviously when the coil leash gets stretched out several times, it starts to kind of tangle up like an old phone cord. It can also, when you're falling, wrap itself around the mast or around the fuselage, around your foil, and then untangling everything every time is cumbersome. And then if you also have a wrist leash wrapped around the coil leash and so on, it gets very frustrating to deal with all these leashes. And this one, because it's always under tension, it kind of always keeps the leash away from the foil. It's very unlikely that the leash gets wrapped around the foil. So it's much easier to use and will eliminate a lot of that frustration with the leashes. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video about our retracting waist foil leash. Check it out at blueplanetsurf.com or our retail locations. We also sell it at Amazon. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. See you on the water. Aloha.